Chapter 25 The Red Wizard. Just barely having time to get his small shield up before the white, curved energy was released, there was a small explosion that made Link's ears ring for a second as he was thrown backwards. Crying out when his back was scraped up from sliding across the rocky terrain, the Lord Sheriff scrambled to his feet while raising his sword, only to find out that he had lost his grip on it at some point. Easily spotting the silver weapon against the brown rocks, he started towards it, only to have Karok appear in his path. The punch came before Link could react, hitting him between the eyes and making him stumble backwards, followed by the Red Wizard kicking him in the chest. The Lord Sheriff might have fallen onto his back from that last one that made him gasp for breath, but then Karok vanished, instantly reappearing behind him with a spinning kick to the back of the head, making Link get a face full of rocks while once again sliding across the terrain.
"I remember you. The new Hyrule Sheriff now, am I right?"
the Red Wizard asked as Link made a failed attempt to get up.
"The friend that Aghanim ran off with all those years ago to be a common thief instead of staying with the Order."
Instead of immediately trying to fight again, the Lord Sheriff crawled across the ground over to where his silver sword had fallen. Grabbing onto the weapon, and then stumbling a bit while he stood up, he advanced towards Karok, but the Red Wizard leaned to the side, just enough to avoid the slash attack that followed. Stepping and leaning just enough to avoid each of Link's attacks, the two of them circled around the plateau, the other Wizrobes and the wounded Aghanim just watching as the Lord Sheriff failed to hit his target again and again.
"Give me that, boy!"
Karok said, grabbing onto the hilt while kneeing Link in the stomach hard enough to make him fall down.
"Are you sure you defeated Ganondorf? Perhaps I will keep you alive until I retrieve the third Triforce from this place, so that we can ask him."
So that was what the Red Wizard was doing in Death Valley, trying to use his own son to break open Sing's barrier to the Great Palace so that he could, what? Use the three Triforces to somehow bring Ganondorf back? Could they even do that? Regardless, this desire meant that Karok was a dangerous enemy to Hyrule, and that he needed to be stopped from ever getting near the Triforce of Courage. This new determination filled the Lord Sheriff with energy, realizing that not only was the fate of the original Princess Zelda in his hands, but that of the entire kingdom once again. So he jumped to his feet, ready to have his whole plan shattered when the Red Wizard struck him across the face with the hilt of the silver sword. Link saw double, realizing several seconds later that he had collapsed, but then Karok stabbed the sword into the ground before grabbing onto Link and pulling him to his feet.
"You worthless, uppity peasant!"
the Red Wizard scolded, slugging him in the stomach with every accented insult.
"Fight back, you servile, inbred peon!"
After that last hit, the Lord Sheriff used the last of his strength to swing his shield, since it was locked onto his forearm, but Karok vanished at the last second, reappearing off to the side with a chop to Link's ribs, and then another release of the white, curved energy, this time hitting him right in the chest. Flying out the back of the explosion, the Lord Sheriff had rolled across the ground and slid to a stop before he'd even realized that he'd been hit, and now with most of his shirt burned off, Link wasn't getting back up.
"Weak and pitiful,"
the Red Wizard said, pressing his foot down hard into the Lord Sheriff's chest, gathering white energy in each hand.
"You feel that, boy? That is the realization that you are going to die in your proper place, under my heel."
"Reflejar," Aghanim said weakly, pointing his hand toward Link. A barely visible distortion of light formed around the Lord Sheriff's body just as Karok released his double attack, but this time it was the Red Wizard who screamed as he was thrown backwards, his robe singed from the blast and stunned from being completely blindsided by such a powerful attack. Karok was again surprised when his son vanished, reappearing long enough to grab the sword and then vanishing again, this time reappearing so that he could drive the silver blade right into the wizard's chest.
"Aghanim!"
Karok gasped, grabbing his son.
"Aghanim, not good enough."
The young wizard was already wounded, so he didn't stand a chance when the red wizard released another blast of curved white energy right into his chest. Aghanim was catapulted into the air, falling onto one of the other wizrobes and causing a disruption in the spell that was keeping the temperature down, but the others made up for it, restoring the field in a couple of seconds by spacing themselves out a bit more. Something had changed in Karok, though, as he ripped the sword out of himself. He was moving slower, bleeding, and his robes were no longer red. "What?" the no longer red wizard demanded, dropping the sword to the ground. "How did... No!" His answer came when Karok looked back over to where Aghanim had fallen, seeing that his son had very stealthily killed the wizrobe he had landed on by breaking his neck, and holding in his hand the necklace with the ruby ring that he had pulled from his father's neck before being hit with the curved white energy. Now drinking the potion that the dead wizrobe had been carrying and slipping the red ring onto his finger, it was Aghanim's robes that now turned the protective red color as he got to his feet. "So, you have a backbone after all," Karok said, gathering white curved energy in his hand while Aghanim gathered flames in his. "So what now, son? Are you going to kill me? Can you really do it?" "No, father, I can't," the wizard replied, the flame fading from his palms. "I hate you, and you deserve it, but I can't. So he will." Having taken his eyes off Link during the whole exchange, the formerly red wizard hadn't noticed the Lord Sheriff slowly crawling toward the silver sword that had been dropped, and he still hadn't noticed until Link stood up and swung the blade with all his might, slicing through Karok's neck with ease that Link had only seen while wielding the Master Sword before. The formerly red wizard's head was completely separated from his body, causing most of him to collapse to the ground, while his head sank into the nearby magma pool. "Karok is dead!" one of the other wizrobes announced. "Long live Aghanim, the Red Wizard!" "Silence!" Aghanim yelled, stopping them in mid-cheer. "One of you give me a potion, and then get the hell out of my sight, all of you!" The other wizrobes obeyed, one of them handing him another healing potion, before the whole group vanished at once. This caused the temperature of the surrounding area to go back up, but also allowed Aghanim to bring the healing potion to his bruised and bloodied friend, who would have certainly died moments later without it. However, the red liquid did just what it was supposed to, closing the Lord Sheriff's wounds and restoring him to health, so that Link could stand once again. "I've stopped counting how many times you've saved my life, Aghanim," the Lord Sheriff said. I'm really sorry about your father, though." "Don't be," the wizard replied. "This traitor helped Guma and Rebanok kidnap King Facade. Now that you're here, I have to go rescue him." This statement was news to Link, since he hadn't heard anything from the King and Queen since starting off on his quest, but while Aghanim was willing to give him a condensed version of what was happening in his absence, the Lord Sheriff's offer to come and help was refused. After all, Facade had told the wizard about the quest Link was on, and how important it was to the future of the kingdom, so his place was to stay and complete it, just like it had been 5 years ago, when Aghanim hadn't wanted to get involved at first. "You go and claim the Triforce," the wizard said, starting to walk away. "Guma would already have been dead if my father hadn't interfered. I'll see you back at the North Palace." With that, Aghanim vanished, leaving Link once again on his own, as the temperature of the plateau continued to rise, now with nothing up ahead but the flashing barrier that supposedly surrounded the great palace. However, as he approached the crackling, illuminated wall that had done so much harm to Aghanim, the Lord Sheriff honestly had no idea what he was supposed to do. Suddenly, the tattoo on his hand started to hurt, burning like it had done when it first appeared, and when he looked at it this time, it was actually glowing and flashing just like the barrier. He wasn't sure how he knew, but something called him to touch the barrier with his hand, and instead of experiencing a horrific pain like Aghanim had gotten, the barrier turned a pure white color before vanishing. In its place stood a golden overhang that was supported by elaborately carved pillars, also made of gold. In fact, all of the floors, walls, and ceiling that he could see in the archway were golden. And just like the barrier had been, the entrance was crooked a little bit, as if the whole palace, which must have been built into the mountain itself like spectacle rock, was shifting because of the magma. Beyond the elaborate entrance was a staircase that went down into the hidden part of the great palace, and as he took those first steps across the golden walkway, Link knew that somewhere down in the depths of this place, the Triforce of Courage was waiting for him to come and claim it.